My mom told my fiancé I had backed out, handed my wedding to my sister, and taken my $20,000 loan, then acted like the victim when I played the audio of her planning it all to his family. This isn't just about a canceled wedding. This is about the day my own family stole my entire future, my savings, and nearly my sanity, all while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed. And the worst part? They truly believed they were doing me a favor. The piercing beep of a heart monitor ripped me from a hazy darkness. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, like they'd been superglued shut, but I fought them open. Looming over my hospital bed were my mom and my sister, Bree. Their faces were weirdly cheerful, totally out of sync with the sterile, antiseptic smell and the 4 lines snaking into my arm. "She's awake," Bree chirped, her voice a little too high, a little too bright. She was wearing this fancy silk blouse I'd never seen before, her hair freshly highlighted. Mom leaned in, her cloying perfume momentarily eclipsing the hospital's sterile scent. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "The doctor says the food poisoning was quite severe." I tried to speak, but my throat was bone dry, like sandpaper. 3 days unconscious. 3 days. The whiteboard across from my bed confirmed it. 3 days, and my wedding was just a week away. A knot tightened in my stomach. "Malcolm," I rasped, barely a whisper. Mom and Bree exchanged a look. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it sent alarm bells screaming through my still foggy brain. "Oh, about the wedding," Mom began, smoothing her expensive linen pants. My heart started to hammer. "We canceled it. He just wasn't right for you. But don't worry, we made excellent use of the deposit." The heart monitor next to me erupted, a frantic, rapid beeping. It felt like my own heart was trying to punch its way out of my ribs. "What?" The word tore from my throat, raw and desperate. Bree stepped forward, her eyes practically gleaming with excitement. "Your venue, your flowers, your photographer, they're all being used for my engagement celebration instead." The monitor shrieked, louder now, a deafening siren of betrayal. A nurse rushed in, her concerned face swimming into my vision as she checked my vitals. "You need to calm down," she said gently, then shot a pointed look at my family. "Perhaps this isn't the best time for upsetting news." Mom waved her off with a dismissive hand. "Family business. She needs to know." The nurse hesitated, then reluctantly left, probably sensing a losing battle. As she disappeared, memories flooded my mind, a torrent of everything I'd poured into that day. 14 months of meticulous planning, every single penny saved from my freelance graphic design jobs. All those late nights, hunched over my desk, meticulously crafting custom invitations myself just to save on printing costs. The $20,000 personal loan I'd taken out to cover the final expenses, everything paid with non-refundable deposits. I remembered Mom's pursed lips when I'd shown her my simple wedding dress, the one I could actually afford after paying for everything else. "Disappointing," she'd mumbled. "At least someone in this family is practical." The room spun slightly as I struggled to sit up. "What did you tell Malcolm?" My voice was still weak, but a new kind of fire was sparking within me. Bree shrugged, examining her freshly manicured nails. "That you were backing out. That you didn't want to go through with it." My hands, which had been trembling uncontrollably, suddenly stopped. A strange, chilling calm washed over me. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. It wasn't there. "Where's my phone?" "We took care of everything, darling," Mom said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. "The phone's been ringing nonstop with questions. We handled it. You had no right." My voice, though still hoarse, sounded stronger, infused with a nascent rage. "Romy, be reasonable," Bree said, perching on the edge of my bed as if this were a casual chat. "You're creative. You'll understand one day. This was bigger than your little wedding." Little wedding. The words sliced through me. My mind reeled, calculating. The venue I'd fallen in love with but could barely afford. The photographer who'd given me a discount because he liked my design portfolio. The florist who'd worked tirelessly with my limited budget to create something truly beautiful. My mental calculator word, at least $80,000 in non-refundable deposits, gone. My relationship with Malcolm, potentially destroyed by their lies. And then a colder, deeper realization, something I'd always known, but never fully faced. My family had always seen me as less worthy, less important than my sister. I stared at them, these women who shared my blood, who could hurt me so carelessly. In their eyes, I saw no remorse. Only the expectation that I would, eventually, understand. That I would forgive. Because that's what I'd always done. But as I looked at Bree's smug smile and Mom's dismissive confidence, something hard and unyielding solidified inside me. Something that had been soft for far too long. "Get out," I whispered. "What?" Mom blinked, genuinely surprised. "Get out of my room." Each word was perfectly clear, despite my raw throat. "Now. Get out." The monitor shrieked again as the nurse returned, more insistent this time. As my family was finally ushered from the room, I closed my eyes against the harsh fluorescent lights, against the horrifying reality of what they'd done. They'd taken everything, but they'd also shown me exactly who they were, and who I needed to become. The discharge papers felt like sandpaper between my fingers as I unlocked my apartment door. 3 days in that sterile hospital had left my body weak, but what happened in that room had forged something unbreakable inside me. The stale air of my apartment greeted me, a stark reminder that life had paused for me, even as mine was being ruthlessly stolen. My laptop sat on the coffee table, right where I'd left it before the food poisoning hit. My hands still trembled slightly, a mix of lingering medication and pure, unadulterated rage, but I plugged it in. When the screen flickered to life, a notification blared, 467 unread emails. But I didn't open my inbox. Instead, a grim habit from managing client deadlines, I clicked on my sent folder first. There they were, staring back at me. Dozens of messages I never wrote, all sent during my hospitalization. To my venue, I've decided to transfer all arrangements to my sister's engagement party instead. Same date, same details. To my florist, please redirect my order to celebrate my sister's engagement. The family is thrilled about this change. To my photographer, as discussed with my mother, please shift all services to my sister's event. Nausea rolled through me, a sickening wave entirely different from the illness that had landed me in the hospital. This was calculated, planned, executed while I lay unconscious, helpless. My phone, which Mom had finally deigned to return to me as I left the hospital, vibrated. Malcolm's name. The first contact since I woke up. "I wish you'd just told me yourself instead of having your mother call. After 3 years together, I deserved that much." The room spun. I stumbled to my bedroom closet. My wedding dress, it should be hanging in its garment bag, protected by plastic and hope. The closet stood empty. They'd taken everything. My doorbell rang an hour later. When I opened it, my parents and Bree stood in the hallway, their faces plastered with expressions of manufactured concern that didn't quite reach their eyes. They filed into my living room, remaining standing while I sank into my armchair, still unsteady. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Mom asked, her hand reaching out to pat my shoulder. The question ignited a roaring inferno in my chest. Before I could respond, Bree stepped forward. Her left hand extended in a graceful gesture, and I froze. My engagement ring. The simple, elegant emerald-cut diamond Malcolm had saved for months to buy. It glinted on her finger. "I'm keeping it safe," she explained, twisting it slightly, as if she were doing me a favor. "Since everything's been so chaotic." Dad cleared his throat, taking charge as he always did when difficult truths needed explaining. "Romy, we need to discuss the practical aspects of what's happened." Practical. The word was a raw scratch in my throat. "You were too sick. The deposits would have been lost completely," he continued, as if that explained away the theft. "Bree's future father-in-law is a prominent developer. This connection benefits the entire family." "How did you access my email?" "My accounts." My voice was stronger now, laced with a dangerous calm. Mom looked away. "We used your emergency information at the hospital. The doctors needed someone to make decisions, and we're family." I showed Malcolm some photos, Bree added casually, oblivious to the deeper cut she inflicted. "You and Dan at Christie's birthday last year. You looked close. I just suggested maybe you were having doubts." The betrayal cut deeper with each casual admission. They weren't even hiding what they'd done. The Carson name means something now that Bree's marrying into the Whitaker family, Dad said, straightening his shoulders with pride. Sometimes individual sacrifices are necessary for family advancement. Individual sacrifices. As if my wedding, my savings, my future were just inconvenient obstacles to Bree's happiness. Do you understand what you've done? I asked, my voice rising. I opened the calculator app on my phone. $80,000 in non-refundable deposits. Gone. Plus the $20,000 loan I'm still responsible for. Mom waved it away with a dismissive flick of her wrist. You're always so good with money. You'll figure it out. Bree also helped with your clients, Dad added, as if offering good news. She explained you were having a breakdown and couldn't meet deadlines. The room tilted again. My freelance business, built over years of late nights and careful networking, undermined with a few concerned calls. Malcolm has blocked my number, I said, my voice hollow, devoid of emotion. I've tried calling 17 times. This tantrum isn't helping anyone, Dad said, his tone hardening. Legal action would destroy the family and embarrass everyone. Is that what you want? Mom moved to sit beside me, her perfume clouding my senses. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? My phone rang, saving me from a response I knew I'd regret. The wedding videographer's name flashed on the screen. I answered, turning away from my family's watchful eyes. Romy? It's Terry. Listen, I'm really confused about this engagement party rebrand. The venue staff mentioned it was originally a wedding, and when I asked whose, they said yours. What's going on? His concern, this stranger's genuine confusion, felt like the first honest interaction I'd had since waking up in the hospital. After a brief, clipped explanation, I hung up, finding my family still waiting, their expressions unchanged, their self-righteous confidence unwavering. As I stared at them, a question formed in my mind. Should I simply accept this loss as family helping family, as they claimed, or should I fight for what was rightfully mine? Standing up for myself might cost me my family entirely. What do you do when the people who should protect you become the ones who hurt you most? The day of what was supposed to be my wedding rehearsal, a notification chimed on my phone, another Instagram tag from Bree. I shouldn't have looked, but my finger betrayed me, tapping before my brain could intervene. The image filled my screen, Bree and James, champagne flutes raised in a toast, standing in the exact spot where Malcolm and I were supposed to exchange vows. The warm sunset lighting caught the vintage chandelier I'd specifically requested for the space. When you know it's meant to be. Perfect timing. Engaged. Forever after, read the caption. My phone buzzed again, then again and again. Messages from mutual friends poured in. So generous of you to give your sister your wedding plans. Why didn't you tell me you were having second thoughts? I can't believe you just stepped aside like that. I silenced my phone and set it face down on the kitchen counter. The apartment felt too small, suddenly, the walls pressing in. A familiar knot formed in my throat as I realized my mother's version of events was spreading faster than I could ever counter it. The next day, the landline rang, the one I kept for emergency client calls. My mother's voice filled the answering machine, her tone artificially bright, clearly for any potential listeners. Romy, sweetheart, I'm just checking in. Everyone keeps telling me how touched they are by your generosity. Such a beautiful thing, stepping aside when you realized you weren't ready for marriage so your sister could have her moment. Call me back when you can. I grabbed the receiver and slammed it back into its cradle, cutting her off mid-sentence. 3 days later, an envelope arrived in my building's mail. The familiar weight and texture of premium cardstock, my cardstock from my design portfolio, told me what was inside before I even opened it. The invitation to Bree's engagement celebration. It used my exact wedding design, right down to the custom monogram I'd created, now repurposed with Bree and James' initials. The loan statement arrived the same day. $20,000, plus interest still due, regardless of whether I walked down the aisle or not. I spread my financial documents across the kitchen table that night, calculator in hand, running numbers until the digits blurred before my exhausted eyes. Every scenario ended the same way. Financial ruin. unless I could recover what they'd taken. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Client deadlines missed during my hospital stay piled up. I heard you were having a breakdown, one client said cautiously when I called to apologize for the delay. Your sister reached out to let us know. I hung up and immediately drafted a professional email explaining the actual situation, severe food poisoning, hospitalization, while carefully avoiding any mention of family theft. The wording took hours, my finger hovering over send, as I weighed professional transparency against airing family trauma. Late Thursday night, I discovered they'd accessed my design portfolio. Private concepts I'd been developing for months now appeared in posts from Bree's future mother-in-law, praising her future daughter-in-law's creative eye. The Whitaker family's social media accounts showcased napkin designs and table settings identical to ones in my private folders. That was it. I started keeping notes, times, dates, screenshots, emails. I created a timeline labeled Wedding Theft and documented everything chronologically. The act of recording felt like the first real step toward reclaiming what was mine, transforming emotional wounds into evidence. The call from Flora's Florals came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. Romy? It's Cynthia from the flower shop. Something strange is happening with your wedding arrangements. I braced myself for another cancellation notice. I know, I admitted. They're being used for my sister's engagement party now. A long pause. Your mother said you were too ill to manage the details. She never mentioned. Cynthia stopped, then continued, her voice softer. I've worked with families for 30 years. This doesn't feel right. It isn't, I confessed, my voice smaller than I intended. Listen, Cynthia said, a warmth in her tone. I put aside some arrangements from flowers your sister rejected for her celebration. They're beautiful, just not what she wanted. If you'd like them, they're yours. No charge. When I arrived at the shop that afternoon, a cluster of blush peonies, ivory ranunculus, and blue thistle awaited me, flowers deemed not glamorous enough for Bree's vision. Sometimes beauty comes from what others discard, Cynthia said kindly, pressing the arrangement into my hands. The dinner invitation arrived from my mother 3 days later. Family healing, she called it in her voicemail. Time to reconcile and support Bree's happiness. The Whitakers will be there. My first chance to meet the family Bree was marrying into. I wore black, not mourning clothes, but a simple sheath dress that felt like armor as I walked into my parents' dining room. James Whitaker rose when I entered, his handshake firm, his smile genuine. He clearly had no idea. So glad you're feeling better, he said. Your parents told us about your illness. Terrible timing. Dinner proceeded with excruciating pleasantries. Mom described Bree's engagement celebration plans, my wedding plans, while Dad beamed proudly. I pushed food around my plate, waiting. Can you just be happy for your sister? Mom finally asked during dessert, her voice honeyed with maternal concern. Why must you make everything about yourself? The table fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I'm not making this about me, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. You already did that when you stole my wedding. James's fork clattered against his plate. What do you mean, stole? Romy is still not well from her hospital stay, Mom interjected quickly, reaching for my arm. Perhaps we should step outside. I was hospitalized with food poisoning, I continued, looking directly at James. While I was unconscious, my family canceled my wedding, told my fiancé I didn't want to marry him, and transferred all my venues, vendors, and designs to Bree's engagement party. James turned to Bree, confusion evident in his furrowed brow. Is this true? My sister's face flushed crimson. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw a crack in her confidence. The next morning, I received a call from the videographer, his voice cautious. Romy, I thought you should know. I accidentally left equipment recording during setup at your venue. I mean, the venue where your sister's having her celebration. Your mother and aunt were there early, discussing the situation. He paused. I have the footage. They didn't know they were being recorded. My heart pounded as he continued. Your aunt said, and I quote, this was for the best. Bree elevates the family name. Romy, well, she always aimed small. Within days, the photographer emailed, then the venue coordinator. Each message expressed discomfort with the situation, offering statements about what really happened. These strangers, people I hired but barely knew, showed more concern for my well-being than my own parents. One Wednesday evening, I searched for civil attorneys specializing in fraud and contract litigation. I was halfway through drafting an email when my phone lit up with a name I'd almost given up seeing: Malcolm. "I've been hearing some strange rumors," he said, his voice guarded but not hostile. "Stories that don't match what your mother told me." I closed my eyes, relief washing through me. "I need to tell you what really happened." Later that night, as I shut my laptop, preparing for bed, a new email notification appeared. The sender: James Whitaker. The subject line: request to meet privately. I opened it, my fingers suddenly steady as I typed my response. 3 days later, the morning light filtered through the coffee shop windows as I arranged my documents on the table. Everything organized, labeled, dated. My hands were steady now, unlike the trembling mess they were in the hospital a week ago. James Whitaker sat across from me, his expression wary but attentive. He looked nothing like his fiancé, where Bree was all practiced smiles and performative charm. James had the straightforward gaze of someone who valued clarity. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. I slid the first folder toward him. "This is the original venue contract. My signature, my deposit check, my name on every page." His eyes scanned the document, his brow drawing together. I pushed forward the loan paperwork next. $20,000, still in my name, still my responsibility. James looked up, confusion evident. "But Bree said," I know what Bree said. The words came out sharper than intended. I took a breath, remembering my attorney's advice. Facts, not emotions. Here are text messages from the vendors confirming the transfer of services while I was hospitalized. Each piece of evidence landed between us like stones dropping into still water. James's face grew increasingly troubled, ripples of realization spreading across his features. His coffee sat untouched, cooling beside contract pages that burned with implications. "I was told this was a generous gift from your family," he finally said, his voice hollow. "That you wanted to step aside because you weren't ready for marriage." "Nothing was given," I replied, the words simple but devastating in their truth. "Everything was taken." The bell above the door chimed, and I didn't need to turn to know who'd entered. The scent of Bree's perfume, always too strong, always announcing her presence before she spoke, wrapped around us like a chokehold. "What's going on here?" Her voice carried across the quiet shop, drawing glances from other patrons. "Having a little secret meeting about me?" James stood, his face tightening. "Bree, we need to talk about these contracts." "Contracts?" Bree laughed, the sound brittle against the morning quiet. "She's always been jealous of me, always trying to ruin my happiness when things finally go right." A woman at the table beside us looked up, recognition flashing across her face. "Excuse me, aren't you the patient from Memorial Hospital? Floor 3. My stomach tightened as I nodded. "I was your night nurse." She turned to James and Bree. "I was so concerned when your family took her phone while she was unconscious. The way they accessed her accounts, I almost reported it, but they insisted they had permission." The color drained from Bree's face as James stepped away from her, creating a distance that spoke volumes. "You did what?" His voice dropped to that dangerous quietness that only truly angry people manage. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my parents. They need to hear this directly." Bree reached for his arm. "James, wait." He moved further away, speaking in low tones into his phone. Bree stood frozen, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling around her. As James ended his call, he turned to me. "My parents would like to meet with you. Tomorrow evening, if possible." I nodded, watching Bree's face contort with panic. As James's parents requested to meet, I wondered if I should pursue full legal action against my family or accept the Whitakers' offer to mediate a resolution. Would justice require burning bridges entirely, or was there a path that held my family accountable while preserving some semblance of a relationship? That evening, my phone buzzed with messages of support. The videographer had sent the raw footage from the venue setup, capturing my mother's voice clearly. Romy would understand if she knew what was at stake here. The Whitakers can do so much for our family." His formal statement accompanied the file. I was misled about the nature of the event change and wished to provide evidence of the deception. Malcolm called next. "I met with your attorney today," he said, his voice steadier than the last time we spoke. "I told her everything your mother said to me, how they showed me old photos of you with David to convince me you were having doubts." My throat tightened. "Thank you. I should have called you directly instead of believing them." The vendors followed with a joint statement describing the manipulation, the claims that I was too ill to make decisions, the forged emails, the pressure applied when questions arose. My attorney's message was brief but powerful. "With the evidence collected, we have strong cases for fraud, conversion, and defamation. The documentation is impeccable." Just before midnight, my father called. His voice lacked its usual authority, replaced by something I'd never heard before, uncertainty. "What do you want to make this go away, Romy?" he asked without preamble. I said nothing, letting his question hang in the silence. "Several of your mother's friends have called her today," he continued. "People are talking." I checked Bree's Instagram, normally updated hourly with wedding planning details, to find it suddenly quiet. The last post, featuring my original venue, had accumulated comments questioning the event's origin. As I prepared for bed, an official email arrived from James. "My family would like to invite you and your parents to our home tomorrow evening to discuss a resolution to this situation." The same message. Same request. Again. I set down my phone, staring at the wall where my wedding calendar once hung. For the first time since waking in that hospital bed, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly, but something stronger. The scales of power had finally begun to tip. The next day, the Whitakers' living room felt like a museum. Pristine cream furniture, family photos in sterling silver frames, not a cushion out of place. James's father sat with military posture, his mother perched beside him like a vigilant bird. I sat across from them, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. My family arrived 15 minutes late. Mom swept in wearing her church clothes, Dad tugging at his collar like it was strangling him. Bree followed, her eyes puffy but chin high. "We've prepared a statement," Dad announced, unfolding a paper with trembling fingers. "There have been unfortunate misunderstandings between our daughters. This was simply a case of family helping family during a crisis." The words echoed hollow against the Whitakers' vaulted ceiling. No one responded. Mom leaned forward, her pearl necklace catching the light. "Romy, we've always supported you, even when you chose that impractical career over the accounting degree we offered to pay for." I remembered eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week while putting myself through design school. The audacity of her revision of history made my jaw clench. Bree sighed dramatically. "I'm sorry you feel hurt, but everything worked out for the best. James and I needed a proper celebration, and you were too sick to use what you'd arranged." "Family loyalty matters," Dad interjected, his voice rising slightly. "Keeping private matters private is what distinguishes respectable families." Mr. Whitaker's eyebrow lifted, almost imperceptibly. "If you pursue legal action," Mom said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "you'll be cut off completely. No holidays, no contact with your cousins, no family support, ever again." The threat hung in the air like smoke. I took a deep breath and placed my leather portfolio on the coffee table. The room fell silent as I opened it methodically. "I'd like to share some information with the Whitakers," I said, my voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. From my bag, I removed a small speaker and placed it beside my documents. With one touch, voices filled the room. My mother and aunt, crystal clear. This was for the best. "Bree elevates the family name. Romy, well, she always aimed small. Her wedding would have been embarrassing compared to what we've arranged for Bree." Mom's face drained of color. I pressed another button, stopping the recording. The videographer accidentally left equipment running during what was supposed to be my wedding setup, I explained to the Whitakers. He was quite troubled by what he heard. I spread out printed emails showing my mother accessing my accounts while I was hospitalized, correspondence with vendors where she impersonated me, bank statements revealing my wedding loan payments diverted to cover Bree's additional expenses. "There are 23 separate fraudulent transactions," I said, pointing to highlighted figures, not including the identity theft when they accessed my email and vendor accounts while I was unconscious. James's father leaned forward, scanning the documents, his jaw tightening with each page. "This isn't family helping family," he said finally, his voice like gravel. "This is theft and fraud." Bree began to sob. Mom reached for her hand, ignoring me completely. I met Mr. Whitaker's gaze. I didn't need their approval anymore. I just needed them to make this right. The room felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. Family photos stared down from the walls, generations of Whitakers looking proper and principled. I wondered what they would think of this drama unfolding beneath their frames. Mr. Whitaker stood, straightening his cuffs, a businessman's habit before delivering terms. "You have two options," he told my family. "Full financial restitution, including the $80,000 in deposits, loan interest, and compensation for emotional damages, along with a public apology clearing Romy's name with her clients and friends, or legal proceedings, which I assure you will become very public, very quickly." Bree's crying turned to wailing. "You're ruining everything." This was supposed to be my moment. Everyone was finally seeing me. Mom wrapped her arm around Bree's shoulders. "Sweetheart, we'll fix this. Don't worry." She didn't glance my way. The weight of 30 years of being second best should have crushed me. But somehow, watching their performance now, I felt nothing but clarity. Mrs. Whitaker rose from her seat and, to everyone's surprise, moved to stand beside me. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "In our family," she said quietly, "we value honesty above convenience." Dad slumped forward, elbows on knees, finally meeting my eyes. "We made a terrible mistake. We will make restitution." The admission should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching strangers acknowledge a debt. Mr. Whitaker turned to his son. "James, I believe you should reconsider this engagement. Character reveals itself in crisis." Bree gasped, mascara streaking down her cheeks. As Dad signed the agreement Mr. Whitaker's lawyer had prepared, full repayment of $80,000 plus interest and damages, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The photos from Bree's stolen celebration would be removed from social media and vendor websites by tomorrow morning. The money would be returned within 30 days. What remained unresolved was whether I could ever trust my family again after such a fundamental betrayal. Some broken things can't be mended with money or apologies. As we concluded the meeting, Mrs. Whitaker walked me to the door. Through the leaded glass panels, I saw a familiar figure waiting by a car in the circular driveway. Malcolm stood in the golden afternoon light, hands in his pockets, uncertain but present. James had invited him to hear the truth. I paused at the threshold, wondering if second chances existed for relationships built on ruins. But somehow I already knew the answer. And in a year, I would finally breathe fully again. A year later, the morning sunlight poured through the wide windows of my Portland apartment, casting golden rectangles across the polished concrete floor. I moved between them, barefoot, coffee mug warming my palms as I studied the mock-ups spread across my drafting table. The space felt entirely mine, no compromises, no apologies. A notification chimed from my laptop. Another client booking for Second Bloom, my consultancy for women reclaiming milestone events stolen by circumstances, or in some cases, by people who should have protected them. The irony doesn't escape me. Mom and Bree never imagined their betrayal would become my business model. My gaze drifted to the framed testimonial on my wall. "You helped me rebuild what I thought was permanently broken." The words belonged to Elaine, a widow whose in-laws had canceled her husband's memorial service without consulting her. We recreated it, better than before. The mail slot clicked. Among the envelopes sat a heavy cream invitation with familiar handwriting. My cousin Rachel's wedding announcement. The first family contact in months. I settled into my reading chair, fingers tracing the embossed edges. A year ago, I would have immediately RSVP'd yes, regardless of my own feelings. The old Romy prioritized family peace above personal boundaries. That woman no longer exists. Tucked inside the invitation was a handwritten note. "I know what they did. Your presence would mean the world to me, but I understand if it's too much." I set the invitation on my coffee table, neither accepting nor declining. I'll decide based on what I want, not what obligation dictates. The choice itself felt like victory. The doorbell rang at 7. I opened it to familiar faces bearing covered dishes and wine bottles. Tonight marked the anniversary of what would have been my wedding day. Instead of mourning, we were celebrating. "The garden's ready," called Lisa, the florist who first noticed something wrong when Mom tried changing my arrangements. She'd arranged fairy lights along my small balcony garden, transforming it into something magical. Tom, the videographer whose accidental recording proved my family's deliberate deception, adjusted a portable speaker. Beside him, Eric, the photographer, arranged platters on my outdoor table. These vendors had become friends when they refused to participate in my family's scheme. Malcolm arrived last, looking relaxed in a way he never did during our engagement. We tried rekindling our relationship after the truth emerged, but some broken things can't be mended in that way. The friendship that remained proved more valuable than what we lost. He raised his glass as we settled around the table. To boundaries that protect and second chances that heal. The next morning, I sat before a microphone in a downtown studio. The producer signaled 5 seconds until we were live. Today on The Stories We Reclaim, we're speaking with Romy Carson, whose family's betrayal became the foundation for her successful consultancy, helping others rebuild after personal catastrophes. The host began, "Romy, we've received news that a publisher has approached you about sharing your experience in book form." I smiled. Yes, it's still surreal. The book will focus on helping others recover from family betrayal without losing themselves. The question many listeners wonder, the host continued, have you forgiven your family? I considered carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing harmful people continued access to your life. I've released the anger, but I maintain the boundaries their actions made necessary. After the interview, I walked through the Japanese garden, stopping to photograph a delicate purple blossom pushing through a crack in a stone wall, beauty emerging from brokenness. As I captured the image, I wondered if reconciliation requires forgetting the past, or if true healing comes from remembering, but no longer being defined by it. What moments in your life have you had to reclaim from those who tried to take them?